Hi, I'm Eibhlin Johnston of the Resiliency Hub. Shannon Chamber of Commerce hosted a webinar on resiliency for parents and young people on the 14th of May 2020. We were delighted to be part of that webinar and to be joined by Debbie Fisher of IHeart Principles. Before I introduce you to Debbie and the concept and what she discussed, I'd just like to cover a few basic points of what we use and the coaching tools that we use when we are delivering training and coaching to young people, parents, whether it's in a corporate environment or on a one-to-one basis. And the basic premise is that we have everything we need inside us. That intelligence is everywhere in nature, but we forget to notice it in ourselves. We also talk about our psychological system being that intelligent system, and that well-being is built into our psychological system. That well-being includes quality like peace of mind, hope, gratitude, kindness, love, feelings of security, wisdom, and resiliency is our natural state. We then talked about outsourcing our feelings to things or other people. We asked the question, do you think somebody or something can put a feeling in you? Quite often we innocently misunderstand that one person or something can put a feeling in us, whether it's a happy feeling or a sad feeling. This starts from a very young age. It starts with teddy bears, games, toys, friendships. But actually, as we grow older, this turns to bosses, relationships with partners, peers, our children, and to cause an awful lot of confusion, particularly about our well-being and how we interact in our relationships with others. During this presentation, Debbie is going to talk through some of these points and lead us through 5 concluding points about resiliency and takeaways for parenting. I'm going to hand you over to Debbie Fisher. Debbie Fisher is a trainer and senior facilitator with IHeart Principles. She was a modern languages teacher for years, and then she actually joined IHeart Principles. Thank you for joining us, Debbie. Over to you.
Great to be with you all this afternoon. And can I encourage John and Jerry and Maria and everyone else, Liana on the call, to Adrian, Alan, to put your cameras on, because really to get the full benefit of this, hi everyone, hi Maria, to get the full benefit of this, you really want to see something new for yourself. It's not about me or anyone else telling you things. It's about pointing you in a direction, and that sort of flash of recognition when you get an insight that you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, that's true. I hadn't really thought of it that way before. And the only way I'm going to be able to register if you're actually picking something up from this and it's meaning anything to you is by engaging with you face to face. So to get the full benefit of our time together, hi John, it would be great to turn your cameras on now so that we can really have a bit of a dialogue here, because otherwise I could just be recording this and sending it out and it just won't have the same impact. So so what I'll do is just remind us of why we're here. We're here because everyone in times of chaos and uncertainty is looking for that elusive quality of resilience. That's I'm sure what's motivated everyone to be on this call today. And the truth is, it's one of those essential characteristics that we need in life, no matter who we are, no matter what we're up against. But of course, in more challenging times, like we find ourselves in the midst of, we need it even more desperately. And so that's why we're here today, to really call into question what we understand by resilience and to see if we can give you a new definition of it, redefine it for you in a way that's going to make it more available to you and more clear to you and more powerful to you. So to begin with, I'd like to ask you the question, what do you understand by resilience? Let's hear from you guys what that means to you. And maybe where the areas in your life that you'd like to see it. So we can make this time together as practical and helpful as possible. So whoever wants to go first, I don't mind.
So Helen has put something into the chat box, being strong, all areas right now.
Good. Okay. Yep. A very good one. So yes, we need it across the board. And that's one very common definition: strength, strength of character. Yep. Okay. The strength to be able to power through no matter what. Okay. Anybody else got any other?
Maria, hi everyone.
Hi, Maria. Hi.
Being able to bounce back after setbacks, and when things don't go your way, having that mind
Lovely.
to be able to bounce back.
Great.
And you can hear I have a lovely singing and playing the piano beside me here.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I've got a little story for you about playing the piano in a minute, so you'll appreciate that one. Okay, great. So yes, so strength of character, that bounce back factor, which is somewhat to do with the strength, but also to do with the fact that even when you've been knocked down and you feel like you've lost your strength, that it comes back to you. Okay. Did Alan want to say something?
Yeah, I suppose having a roadmap really to know where you're and how to deal with matters. Really, I think having a vision and roadmap.
Brilliant point. Yes, very helpful. A roadmap that's not just useful in one small context, but a roadmap that's going to be useful no matter where you find yourself, in a way, right?
Yes, yeah.
A psychological roadmap. Brilliant. We're getting close to what today is going to be all about. Yes, thank you. So anyone else want to add something to that? Melissa maybe, or Jerry, or Adrian, Liana? Anyone got any different opinions apart from the ones we've already mentioned?
There's one in the chat room actually, which was,
yeah.
When we get knocked down, we get back up again.
Yes, so that's that bounce back factor. Okay, all right, great. So you're aware that there are many different definitions of resilience, but what we're pointing towards is a much deeper, more universal definition of resilience, something that's going to be there for you no matter what, and something that's in everybody, something that we can all look to within ourselves, no matter what's going on in our life and no matter who we are. So the issue with the conventional idea of resilience, the reason that it's somewhat limited is because it's generally talking about certain personality traits or characteristics that will enable you to somehow manage your circumstances by just sheer will, strength, determination, not giving up. It feels very effortful. And at times that will work, but there'll be times where it's just not enough. And I'm sure we've all had experiences in the last month or so where we've encountered those moments where it's not cutting it, right? So we're looking at a more powerful definition of resilience. And our definition is this simple. It's about not being bound or at the effect or a victim of our circumstances. It's the fact that psychologically, we have this system that Ev was talking about, where our feelings in the moment, our experience in the moment, even though it looks like it's going to really look like it's coming from the situation that we find ourselves in reality, now we would call that flat earth thinking, right? It seems to work that way. It seems like the earth is flat when you look out, in the horizon. But we know that that's not true. We know we live in a realm around Earth, right? Now, the reality of our psychological experience is that it's only ever coming from one source, and that's from our minds, from what we call this power of thought that's actually generating the experience for us. So in a moment that we're feeling stressed, even though it might look like it's the circumstances of this virus that are making us stressed, or the lack of a job if we've lost our job, or kids being at home being a handful to manage, or schoolwork that we don't know how to help our children with, or a whole host of other reasons. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to put some of those in the chat for us so that we can see and address them. So I'll give you that moment now. Let's just fill the chat with all the apparent reasons that logically really do seem to have the power to make us feel anxious, stressed, insecure. So let's, if you can type those in now, or if you want to, you can unmute yourself and just tell me. So yes, children missing friends, yep. Elderly parents, yes. Anything else that you're up against that looks like yes? Lack of human contact, that's a good one. No separation between work and home. Missing family and friends. When a loved one is suffering. Right, now these are all really logical reasons that are a reality. We're not saying they're an illusion, right? Those are the real circumstances in our lives. Confined living and workspace, having to do it all in one, absolutely. So we're all up against these obstacles, and they are the reality of our lives in this moment. And they're not permanent, they're always changing. You know, even before lockdown, if I did this survey and I asked you to come on and tell me what are all the stresses in your lives, what's causing you to lose sleep and take away your peace of mind, you may have different reasons from the ones that you're having right now, but I can guarantee you you'd have an equally long list, right? It's just that because the circumstances have changed, they're looking slightly different, right? In line with the circumstances we're up against. So the uncertainty, yes, is a big one. And that's interesting because it seems the uncertainty seems to be even more apparent and on our minds at the moment, just because all the usual things that we take for granted have been suspended or put on hold, and we don't know when they're going to resume normality again. So that element of uncertainty seems to be heightened. But if you think about it logically, what are our certainties in life? What can we really ever be sure is reliable? 100% will stay the same. Yes, so Adrian says nothing is permanent. Everything is changing. Brilliant. Now, that's what we're pointing to. But what we do in what we teach is we uncover a constant, which is unbelievably helpful in people's lives. It's a psychological constant. It's the way our minds are created for us as human beings. And we're born that way, and we stay that way no matter who we are or where we live or what we're up against, from the moment we're born till the moment we die. And that psychological constant is that everything we feel and experience in life, even though it looks like it's coming from our circumstances that are changing all the time, in actual fact, it's coming from a completely different source. We have to look in the opposite direction. We have to look to our minds to understand what we're feeling in a moment. And if you sort of look into your own lives, you can take one day of lockdown, and you can have a day that's full of sort of normal challenges that lockdown is presenting. And you can think about different moments through that day and how in 1 hour, you might be absolutely at peace with yourself. You might be enjoying the fact that you're not having to commute to work. You might enjoy the fact that you've got some extra quality time with your kids. You might enjoy the fact that you've got that designated hour of exercise where you can all go out and enjoy the fresh air together as a family. You might enjoy the fact that maybe your workload is a bit lighter than normal. Suddenly it's like you're looking through a lens where everything doesn't seem to be doom and gloom. In fact, you're quite at peace. You're managing very admirably well. You may even have surprised yourself at how well you're coping. And then in another moment, without the situation having actually changed at all, you can be struggling. It can all look overwhelming. You can start, your mind will take you into the future and you'll start to imagine, what if this doesn't change? And what if I'm still in this same boat in 2 months from now? And how will we survive? And what about the kids' education? And how can I keep doing this? And suddenly, from a moment of everything feeling fairly manageable and secure, you're finding yourself, it's almost like it's a different person having another experience of that same reality. Now that just gives us evidence of the fact that it's not the situation that's creating the experience for us. It's our minds. It's how we're using this power of thought to respond to a situation, how we're interpreting it. And our mind is going to work in one of two directions. It's either going to work from the assumption or premise that I am the victim of my circumstances. There are things, situations, people, places, things in this world, in this life of mine, that have the power to either help me and put a good feeling in me, or harm me and make me suffer, take my well-being away from me. And when your mind is working with that, what we call a faulty logic, because it's not true, right? It might seem true at times, but it's not a constant. So when our mind is working from that faulty logic, it takes a certain trajectory. And innocently, without us even being aware, it gets really busy, because your mind is having to look outside of you to try and control your environment, to control people's behavior, to control the situation, to try and get a handle on everything, to try and get some degree of consistency so that you know where you stand. Because when you don't, you feel unprepared, you feel vulnerable, you feel insecure, and you have to do something about that. You try to help yourself, and your mind just gets busier and busier. And your lives get more and more frantic, and it becomes a downward spiral that ends in that stress and that depression and that burnout that we are all very familiar with. Now, the amazing thing to learn is that there's another option available to us, that we actually have an alternate path that is our default setting, in fact, because it aligns us with a psychological constant, with a fact of the human existence, that from every moment to the next, our feelings and our experience are coming from within our minds, and that there is nothing outside of that psychological system that has the power to give us well-being or to take it away. The well-being is built into that system. We already have, like on that slide you saw that Ev showed us, we already have everything we need inside of us to handle life. And in the moments when we're not doubting that, and we're not undermining that capacity, and we're not second guessing it, and we're not imagining that we're born broken or damaged or lacking in some way, then those are the moments where, without having to use a lot of will and effort and strategies and techniques, naturally we find ourselves in the flow of life. We're managing, even if we find ourselves in a situation we are not familiar with, that we haven't had prior experience of. Suddenly we're almost gifted the insights and the common sense and the knowledge in the moment of how to be responsive to that situation and get through it. So can I just ask you if you can all pause for a moment, and you can put in the chat, start to think about those moments. What does it feel like when your mind is settled down? Let's hear some of those adjectives. What are the things that you feel? Calm, yes. What else? Harmony, beautiful. What else? Peaceful, yes. Creative, that's right. Content, lovely. Focused, contentment, clarity, yes. Relaxed, free, wonderful, yes. Now look how wonderful that is, that just in a few seconds we can all go into our minds and access that feeling, right? That state of mind, it's coming from within us. We're born with it. It's available to everybody. It's not dependent or conditional on anything outside of us, right? But every time we forget that truth, that our innate well-being and resilience is built into us, into our psychological system, every time we forget and overlook that fact, what happens? Our minds get over busy. We start overthinking, repetitive thinking, negative thinking, fearful thinking, insecure thinking, and suddenly we're confused. We've lost that clarity. We're feeling more and more stressed. The circumstances that look manageable feel overwhelming all of a sudden. And that takes us on a trajectory of suffering. So to remember in a moment that that's not inevitable and it's not required, and that we have a natural ability, the moment we remember what we're born with, that our clarity, our well-being, our peace of mind is an inside job. It's a part of our psychological system. It's not dependent on anything else in ourselves or the world to access. The moment we see that, our minds will settle down, we'll get very present, we'll get calm, and suddenly all those innate qualities that you were accessing so readily are available to us. Clarity, peace of mind, well-being, resilience. And guess what? It's not something we need to learn and be taught how to do and develop and work hard at. It's something that's just innate. We're born with it. It's already there, fit for purpose and custom made. It's like it'll show up for John in one way, it'll show up for Brenda in another way, it'll show up for Maria, for Melissa, for each and every one of us in a specific way at exactly the right time that we need to help us with what we find ourselves up against in life. So it's not one size fits all. It's so individually, beautifully designed and tailor-made to each and every one of us. It's miraculous when you start to uncover it. And it's so vast, this intelligence that we're talking about, that's built into our minds, that we only get glimpses of it. And because we can't ever know what we're going to think ahead of time, we don't even know what it's going to make available to us. It's like you have to be in that moment to know it for sure. So if you can all stop and think for a moment of a time in your life where, a bit like now, you found yourself up against something you had no prior experience or knowledge of, and that if someone had told you, you're going to be in this situation tomorrow or next week or next month, you'd have thought, God help me, because I don't know how I would survive that. And yet, when you found yourself in that situation that you'd not been prepared for, that you didn't believe you'd be able to manage to handle and get through with wisdom and grace and common sense and resilience, that you actually surprised yourself. Can anyone give me a few examples of any? It could be something small, it doesn't need to be major, but it's just that element of, wow, it's like, I did better than I thought I would. Where that sort of that resilience surprised you a bit. You felt quite proud of yourself. It's like, I didn't do as badly as I thought I would. I was a bit braver than I thought I'd be. I kept calmer. I remember a time when my second son, he was only about 2 years old. He was eating something and coughing and crying, and something got inhaled and it went into his lung. And it ended up being a very complicated A&E emergency. Nothing in my life had prepared me for anything like that. And I found myself with doctors who, they also weren't sure. He was so little and they couldn't be sure how to read the x-rays and what the prognosis was. And for a while, there was a lot of fear and uncertainty. And if you'd have told me, Debbie, you're going to have to handle this situation sometime next week, I think I'd have probably fainted. I would not have imagined that I had the resilience in me to handle that situation. But when it came down to it, I really did surprise myself, because in the midst of it, I remained calm, I remained level-headed, I did everything that I could to help the situation, and I was able just to be there for my son in the ways that he needed me to. It's like it wasn't about me. I wasn't even bothered about me. I was just in the situation handling it. So Helen says calm is contagious. So absolutely, and there's the reason that it is because we have this default setting of resilience. That's why it's contagious, because it's in everybody, right? Everybody has the capacity for their minds to calm down and to get clarity and to get common sense and to get present and to get focused and to handle anything that life throws you. We all have that capacity. It's innate. Now, you may ask us now, well, you know, if that's the case, then why are we struggling like we're struggling right now? Yeah, why is there so much suffering in this world? Why do we Why is it that we don't have a plain sailing, wonderful experience of life all the time, right? And there's a simple explanation for that. It's because that system that we're talking about, that psychological system, and all those innate qualities that we're born with, resilience, wisdom, peace of mind, well-being, they're invisible, right? They're not, and we're not taught where to look to find them. We're not told that they're already there within us, that we have everything we need to handle life. We're told that we have to watch out because life is there to catch you out and trip you up, and you better toughen up, and you better get some strategies in place, and you better prepare yourself. We're given all these messages, and that you're lacking, and you need this, you need to learn this, and you need to buy that, and you need to practice this, and you need to do that. And I'm not knocking preparation or education, far from it. But all of the education and the messages and the information that we're being fed the whole time is based on a lie. It's based on an ignorance of the fact that we come into this world, psychologically speaking, with everything we need to navigate it. All the resilience and all the intelligence to handle the challenges that life brings us. And all the well-being that we have unconditionally within us to navigate life with well-being no matter what. So the problem is that every time we forget that fact, right? And I don't expect you to sort of take my word for it today as a truth. It's like something you're going to have to get curious about and start investigating in your lives. And that's why IHeart and the Resiliency Hub and all these places are making their programs available to people to be able to educate themselves about this and get evidence from their own lives about the truth of what we're pointing to, because that's where the insight and the courage of your convictions will come into play, and you'll get to see that this is true. This is available always to help human beings. And the more we know that, and the more we can trust in that, the easier life gets. And the more unaware we are of it, and the more afraid we are of life, the more insecure we are about uncertainty in our circumstances, whether they're in the present or in the future or whatever. So there are certain tendencies that we have when we forget, when we overlook the fact of having all our innate well-being and intelligence built into our psychological system. And one of those tendencies is to look at our environment, look at our circumstances, and to say to ourselves, you know, the grass would be greener if I was somewhere else. If this situation were different, I'd be fine. But as it is right now, there's no hope. It's like, unless this situation changes, I'm being cheated of my well-being, because it looks like the situation has got the power to make you suffer, to make you feel afraid or insecure or stressed or worried. It looks like the situation is putting a feeling in you and compromising your well-being. And so logically, your mind is going to follow that faulty logic, right? It's going to do the best it can with that premise that your mind understands to be true of how life works. So you're going to suddenly get very busy in your minds. When is this situation going to end? What can I do to fast forward this situation? How can I change it? How can I make that person show up differently? How can I control my surroundings? How can I get that control back? Because until those situations are being controlled by you in a way that looks like it'll give you your security back, you're going to be left insecure and stressed and worried. So, and unfortunately, sometimes we find ourselves in situations where it's not possible. We're not in control, like we are now. Who knows how long this COVID-19 is going to go on for? Who knows how quickly we'll be able to resume normality and get back to work as we were before? Who knows when our kids are going to start school again? We don't have any guarantees to control the situation. But the moment we remember that that actually doesn't matter, it's not relevant, because if what we want, peace of mind and well-being, is not dependent on those external factors, then suddenly we have a choice. We're looking in a different direction, the direction where natural inbuilt resilience is readily available to us, where helpful common sense and practical responsive thinking, rather than reactive fearful thinking, will be available to us, right? And then suddenly our minds will calm down and we'll see more clearly and we'll be able to focus more effectively on how we can manage the situation. And like Ian said, suddenly then we get more creative. We find solutions that aren't available to us when our minds are running around like little hamsters on a wheel, looking in the wrong direction to find our well-being and our resilience and our peace of mind, right? Because that peace of mind and that well-being, it's an inside job. It's an internal process. It's our default setting. And every time we remember that this illusion, this very captivating illusion that life gives us, that situations and people and places and things can put a feeling in us and compromise our well-being, the moment we see that that's not true, it's like you're living the best version of yourself. You find yourself in that surprising situation of being more confident, more clear, more focused, more resilient, more calm than you ever imagined you could be. So let me see how we're doing for time. I'd just like to check in with you here at this point. I can give you some examples, from my own life of how that plays out and what it looks like, and how when we remember this essential question, does it look like this situation or this person can put a feeling in me and is actually in control of my well-being?
Yeah, we've got one question that's come in to me privately.
Yes.
Now I love, because I know the one you're going to share, but will I do this one because it has come in, and actually I think it'll cross over a couple of topics, Debbie, and thank you for that share. It was pretty good. It's always great to hear it again a second time from somebody else. And the question is, how can we manage to control ourselves when others around us are having meltdowns? And I think that's others tend to be younger people, so teenagers missing their friends, but actually it could be extended to anybody really. I've been prone to the odd meltdown myself.
Absolutely.
So how would you respond to that, Debbie?
Okay, great. That's a great question. So what do we do about people around us, including ourselves at times, right? We can all identify with that, having our moments of meltdown when we lose the plot. If you're a toddler, you're kind of excused for having your temper tantrum, but when you're a parent, it doesn't look good and it's not pretty, and there's a lot of bad feeling about it after the fact, and we start beating ourselves up for being such inadequate, hopeless parents, right? So whether it's coming from the adults around us or from the children in our midst, what's going on with that? Why does that happen? Now, to understand why it happens is to really uncover the key to how to handle it. Because with understanding comes compassion, and with understanding comes clarity, and with understanding comes solutions and creativity and resilience. So the understanding piece is being aligned with how our psychological system works, seeing the reality of around Earth rather than being lost down a rabbit hole of misunderstanding and confusion that you imagine you're living on a flat Earth that has an edge to it that you can fall off, right? Now that's where the temper tantrum part comes in. It comes in from an innocent misunderstanding that what you're up against in the moment is nothing to do with your mind and everything to do with the situation that you find yourself in. That person who's behaving badly and being disrespectful or irresponsible, or the mess around the house, or the fact that there's just no routine like you used to have, or it could be 1,000,001 reasons, right? But it doesn't even matter. That's why this talk is not focused on the superficial level of all the symptoms of that misunderstanding, because there's no end to them. There's no point. It's like whack-a-mole. You find the solution to one and another one pops up. You find the solution to that and another one pops up, right? Because when you're following the trajectory of that false logic, there's an infinite number of potential scenarios that can trigger you at any moment that will look like they've got the power to undermine your well-being and create discomfort in you, frustration, anger, upset, insecurity, a whole host of things, right? And naturally, when you think that that's how life works, that these situations and these people have the power to put a feeling in you that you don't like, of course you're going to have a meltdown. Of course your patience is out the window. Of course you're going to try and desperately get a handle on that situation to try and make it look like something that can put a better feeling in you, that can bring you peace of mind and calm again, right? You see that there's a logic to the false logic. But if that's all your mind's got and it's got no other perspective on what you're up against, you're trapped. And that's why the emotions intensify, the thinking intensifies, and until it gets to a point where you can't contain that emotion and that thinking and you explode, right? You can't bear it any longer. Now, when you understand that that's actually what's happening, if it's happening in someone else, you can look beyond those apparent behaviors. You can look beyond the tantrum and the loss of control and the upset and the drama. And you can see that behind that default setting of calm and peace, peace of mind, well-being, resilience is actually always there. Like that slide where Ev showed you where we have the sun covered up by the clouds. That well-being is always there within every human being, that potential for psychological peace of mind and calm and intelligence and responsiveness to the situation. And the moment that a person's thinking settles down and they let go of that fixation on the apparent cause outside of them for why they're suffering, immediately we resume that default setting that you all had access to so readily of calm and peace and well-being and clarity again. Now, the fact that one person in the dynamic of a family, like Helen said, the calm is contagious. The fact that one person can see the truth of what's going on, that even though someone's lost the plot, that even though they're caught in their head and they're imagining they're the victim of this situation and life is all against them and they're desperate and they're not themselves, that they can see, they get a perspective on it, that you understand what's going on for that person. And you also understand that doesn't have to have an impact on you, because where do your feelings come from? They come from your mind. So if your mind is aligned with what's true, with reality, with, you know, around earth understanding of how your feelings are created, that they're created independently of the situation around you, immediately you find the patience, the compassion, the understanding, just to know how to handle that situation with more resilience and more responsiveness. It's like something will occur to you that you wouldn't otherwise have access to when your mind's all confused and you're caught up in the emotions and the drama and the misunderstanding, you see? And it's like I said before, that will show up tailor-made to who you're with and what you're up against. And it might be different on one day and different on another. So, you know, some people say that resilience is about being strong and controlling, or others may say, no, it's actually about being very flexible and receptive and attentive. And the truth is, it isn't one or the other. It's whatever's going to be most appropriate and authentic and helpful in that specific situation.
That's really useful, actually. And I just wrote down, calm is the new oxygen mask. You nearly have to look after yourself first.
That's right. But I'll you know, even with something like calm, it can be deceptive, because there are some people that will put on a mask of calm. You know, that will be their personality type. That will be their coping mechanism. They don't allow themselves to show anything else. They whatever the situation, they have to bottle up what's going on inside of them, and they have to present this calmness like they're not They're not affected by anything. And sometimes that can be infuriating, especially when it's not genuine, when underneath the surface, there's a resentment or there's an impatience, right? Or there's a fear. But because they don't feel free to be able to just express what they're feeling in a moment, it builds up within them, and then that will result in a tantrum or an explosion at some point, because it has to go somewhere, you see. So what we're saying is that there isn't one way of being resilient. It's not about having a certain kind of personality type. It's about simply understanding the resilient nature of your psychological system, that the way that's created is that the power is actually within you, because the feeling that you experience is not coming from people around you, from the situation that you find yourself in, even though it might look that way at times. It's always only ever coming from your mind, the thinking that your mind is creating in a moment. And when you remember that nothing and no one can take that peace of mind and well-being away from you, it cannot be compromised, other than you forgetting that it's there to begin with, that it's innate. That's the only way we get ourselves into trouble innocently, either by not understanding how this system works or just by forgetting innocently in the moment, because it is deceptive.
Yeah, and I think because that actually responds to a question that we've got beforehand, which was like, I just have this knot in my stomach all the time, from trying to make sure that everything is okay. And actually, that actually speaks to that sense of calm, that we're trying to have this, I'm going to use facade, but that's not in the question.
That's right.
Spoken to.
And the beauty of when you're really seeing that your well-being is innate, there's nothing to try, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to fix or control. You're in it, you're living it, it's who you are. You become resilience, you become calm, you become compassion and love and understanding and well-being. Those are the qualities of your actual being. That's what you default back to, your true essence.
Yeah, that's great. I know you had a couple of little small shares. I'm conscious that we've 5 minutes left, and I know that Helen wants to do a small wrap up. You had a couple of 5 little points, I think. Would you have time to share them?
So yes, I can certainly leave those with you, because it's maybe a nice little takeaway for everybody, that in order for a family to be resilient, we came up with 5 little pointers that are a result of everything we've been talking about today. So the first one is that it's okay to be true to yourself. You don't have to pretend to be a way that you're not genuinely feeling in a moment, right? You can be honest with yourself and with the people around you, because there isn't one right way to be in life, and there's no fixed way of being in life. We're constantly evolving and changing and adapting. We have to, otherwise we wouldn't manage to survive with the circumstances that are changing around us the whole time. And however that presents, we don't have to always be patient. We don't have to always be firm. We don't always have to be anything, right? We need to be free to be ourselves, to be true to ourselves in the moment. So that's the first point. And the second point is because all human beings have innate health and resilience, and all the resources they need already within them to learn and evolve as human beings. And that's because we're all born with this amazing psychological system that has that all built into it already. It's not something we have to develop and get from outside of ourselves. It's already there, it's innate. Now, because our well-being is innate, it's built in, it's our birthright, no one actually can compromise it. We realize this third point, which makes people so resilient, which is that no one and nothing has the power to put a feeling in you, even though at times it might appear that way. No one actually has the power to take your emotional resilience and well-being away from you, and no one has the power to give it to you either, because it's not coming from them, it's within you already. And when people see that, they start to feel empowered and calm and resilient. And so they're going to respond to life and these changing circumstances very differently. And that gives them the fourth point, which we're going to leave you with, which is the freedom to parent from what makes sense to you, rather than from fear of what the reaction is going to be of your kids. So in one moment, it might make sense to be more sensitive, to be more attentive, to be more understanding and more compassionate. But in another moment, it might make much more sense to set some very clear boundaries and be very firm and consistent about them. And not be afraid of the reaction you're going to get, because they need to understand, right? Enough's enough. There are limits. And then the final one is that even though we aren't always experiencing peace of mind, it's always available to us. Because of the nature of our psychological system that we're all born with. It's inbuilt, it's a part of that system. It's always there, so that even when it feels like it's lost, even when it feels like it's been damaged, even when it feels like you just don't know where you're going to ever find it again, to remember that it's just that you're not seeing it clearly in this moment, that it's covered over by all the thinking in your mind that's born of a misunderstanding that situations and people and things can control, can determine your well-being in any given moment. So that it's that well-being, that peace of mind, it's innate. No one can take it away from us.